I realized only late that I had lived most of my life with my fists clenched. Not physically, of course, but in the way I tightened my thoughts, in the way I held my breath as if each day were a test of endurance. I had the impression that if I didn't worry, if I didn't analyze everything to exhaustion, the world I was trying so insistently to control would fall apart. I believed that worries were some kind of safety system, an internal alarm meant to keep me away from mistakes. But I discovered, in time, that they don't protect you, just grow tired. I can't say I had a sudden revelation, a clear moment in which everything made sense. It was more of a slow build-up, a process that started, I believe, the day I realized I was tired for no reason. It was an ordinary morning, one of those days when you wake up before the alarm rings, not because you're rested, but because your mind automatically resumes its calculations and tensions. I got out of bed and, out of habit, sat at my desk thinking I had to solve everything before the day truly began. But while staring at the screen, I felt as if I were pushing an imaginary boulder uphill. And even if I reached the top, I knew it would just roll back down. That S when I understood something simple. No one will reward me for how much I worry. No situation will solve itself faster just because I face it with a clenched heart. On the contrary, many of the best solutions I've found in life appeared in moments when I stopped fighting if, only for a moment. That's how the change started, with a question whispered inside me. One I never dared to say out loud. What if I didn't worry about this anymore? Just that, a question. I didn't ask myself to be indifferent. I didn't ask myself to ignore problems, only to allow myself to breathe. And, to my surprise, the world didn't collapse. It didn't change radically either, but something inside me loosened. I realized that worries are nothing but a form of negative anticipation. I held on to them because I thought they were responsible. I believed that if I wasn't careful with every detail, everything would slip out of control. But in fact, what slips out of control when you worry too much is your own life. The present slips through your fingers because you're too busy building scenarios about a future that, most of the time, never comes to pass. I started noticing the things I had missed for so long. The way the morning light fell differently on my wall. The faint noise of the city which, although chaotic, had its own rhythm, a subtle order. My own breathing, which I had never truly listened to. These may seem insignificant, but in them lay a kind of peace I had never known. And with each passing day, that peace became familiar, like a song you forgot, but instantly recognize when you hear it again. I'm not saying I suddenly became a detached person, that I learned to leave everything to fate. I still worry sometimes, maybe even more often than I'd like, but I learned something essential. Worries are not a duty. They are not a sign of maturity. They are, most of the time, just an automatic reaction, a learned reflex. And a reflex can be changed. The most interesting part is that, as I stopped feeding my compulsive worrying habit, things actually started falling into place. Not because the universe gave me some special magic, but because my mind became clearer. When you no longer cling to your problems as though they define you, you see solutions you once overlooked. When you stop repeating what if something bad happens, you start noticing what is already happening. Sometimes it's actually good. I remember a project I was working on that had become frustratingly stuck. I was convinced that if I didn't think about it nonstop, something would go wrong. I felt guilty every time I took a break. I let myself be consumed until, one day, I simply couldn't anymore. I closed my laptop and went out for a walk without any particular reason. I had no plan, only a need. On that walk, free from the pressure to find answers, I suddenly understood exactly what had to be done. The idea appeared as if it had been there all along, but I had been too tense to see it. In life, things don't align because you force them. They align when you give them space, when you stop locking the door of your mind out of fear, when you stop pushing at time as if you want to mold it into a better version. People around me told me at times that I seemed different, calmer, more present. That I no longer got lost in details, and that I could actually listen. At first, I didn't know if I should believe them. I didn't feel a spectacular transformation, just an inner relaxation as if I had put down a weight I didn't even know I was carrying. But their reactions were a sign that the change was real, not just inside me, but in the way I interacted with the world. I learned to trust the process may be the hardest lesson of all. To accept that I can't control everything, and that I don't need to. To understand that some things happen in their own time, not in the time I impose on them, and that when I force things, I'm actually pushing myself against the natural rhythm of life. When you stop worrying, you don't lose control, you gain clarity, you gain presence. You gain a version of yourself that no longer lives in tension, but in alignment with what is. Today, when I wake up in the morning, I no longer rush anything. I drink my coffee without checking 3 things at once. I watch the street, observe people, hear the sounds around me. It's not meditation, not a spiritual practice, it's simply life as I lived it before, except now I'm actually present in it. I've also come to understand that not everything needs an immediate solution. Some situations become clear through time, not pressure. And there is a wisdom in waiting that has nothing to do with passivity. It's a way of allowing things to breathe. Everything falls into place when you stop worrying. Not because worries stop things from happening, but because they blur your ability to see balance. And balance is always there. The only difference is that we lose sight of it while we busy inventing chaos. If I were to sum it up in a single image, it would be this. I was a person trying to smooth the surface of a restless lake by slapping the water. The harder I hit, the bigger the waves grew. Only when I stopped, when I stepped back, when I breathed, did the lake calm itself. That's how life works too. Today, I'm still learning. I still have moments when I catch myself tensing my shoulders as if I were carrying the whole world there. But now, I know what to do. I stop, I inhale, I ask myself, what if things will fall into place even without me worrying? And every time I ask myself this question, something inside me falls back into place too. It's not magic. It's not giving up. It's the freedom of living without the unnecessary burden of worry. It's the trust that, even though I can't control everything, I can control how I look at life. And sometimes, that's all it takes for things to begin aligning.